Hello, this is another ETN interview and I hope you're going to enjoy it. Of the many projects that I'm developing at the moment under the banner of the ET Newsroom and with Cara Fay of Caritas Productions, this is always going to be a mainstay. That is interviewing those of you who are brave enough to come on camera with people like me and tell us your story, to share what it is that you've learned and understood from those incredible experiences which some of us may or may not understand. So when I had a call from Vernon Elliott, who lives in the southeast of England, though hails from New Zealand originally, and told me about his experiences, I went down to see him. And if I can, I will come to your neck of the wood and interview you. But if not, if it's too far away, then we can do it on Skype or Zoom. Anyway, I hope that you will find this interview of interest, and I think it took Vernon a lot of courage, as it does most of you, and I'm really impressed. So enjoy, buckle up, you're in for an interesting ride. Hello everyone, and this is the ET Newsroom, and I'm here with Vernon Elliott in sunny Canterbury today. And Vernon has very kindly said that he'll come on the record. So Vernon, you're from New Zealand?
Yes, that's correct.
Right,
Yeah,
okay.
Joanne, that's correct.
So I was just going to perhaps just get a little bit of background and how your awareness began of things other or worldish or other energies and other intelligences.
Sure. My first memories are a floating feeling, then seeing, being able to see, and what I could see, what looked like clouds, and I was floating. I wasn't aware of having a body. I was aware of other souls or entities of some sort around me, but it did feel like I was just floating and just seeing, and I was just like the first sign of awareness for me that I could remember.
And you know, when you said your first memory, when did you have that first memory recall, if you like?
It just seems to be there forever.
Oh, does it? Okay.
Yeah, it just seems to be my oldest memory.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, basically at that point, my whole life kind of flashed before me from start to finish. Every emotion you can probably think of kind of kicked in. And the people that I was going to be interacting and living with, namely family, and mostly family, including cats, interestingly, because I've had a lot of cats, they were all part of this introduction, if you will, or me being able to see what was going to play out in my life, if you will. So
it sounds like it was pretty much a pre-birth experience. Is that how you term it?
I would. I wouldn't rule out other things like, any other possibility that someone might come up with, but I think it was a pre-birth experience. It certainly felt like it, and to be able to see and, these people, to see their faces, to know that you've had some history with these people as well.
You can hear the cats, guys. Yeah. Very soon there'll be a little face.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I knew there was these emotions were one of the first ones I remember was all this happiness to be back, what felt like to be back with these people, and all this love and incredible feeling just of being, really. And
was it a lovely feeling to be coming back into human form?
Yeah, that's a difficult question, because initially it was a fantastic first feeling, and then I started to sort of run through everything, including the loss of people and cats, and then that didn't feel so good. I'm not sure at that point if I was given a choice, but it seemed to last for maybe half an hour, time.
Substantial then.
Yeah, quite a long time. It could have been less. It could have been 15 minutes, but that's roughly what I think it was. And then I just felt like when it was complete, I felt like I was just sucked down. And, that's all I know. Was I sucked down, and then was I born? Was I sucked down, and then was I conceived? I don't know.
Did you see your mum?
No, not that I remember.
Yeah. But you saw your current family.
Sorry. Do you mean when initially?
Yes, sorry, in the
yes.
pre-birth.
Oh
yeah.
yeah, definitely, mum. Yeah, mum. I thought you mean did I come down and then see my mum like be born sort of thing. Oh yes, mum was definitely part of it. My whole family, all the cats that I've had. Yeah, my sister, my father. It's interesting, because it's so long ago, and it is my oldest memory. I can't say my children were in it. They could well have been, but there was definitely a lot of history with the people that I was seeing.
Yeah. So when did you become aware of that set of memories? I know you said it's been there, it's your oldest memory, but were you aware of that as a toddler? Was there some sense of that, or were you able to articulate it as a teenager or a 10-year-old? Or
It's just always been with me.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, as a child, I imagine I would have spoke about that with my mum, and she probably said it was some dream or something like that. But I have dreams, and I know what a dream is like, and this was different. This was some experience that you really need to have to. You can't put it into words.
Yeah.
You really can't put some things into words, and this was one of those things.
And what about your first memories then, sort of moving forward in your life of things? I know you've spoken about recurring dreams, which seem to feature other beings, let's call them, or maybe you might call them something else, but also events.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a very, very normal life, except for, I just like to say this because I don't want people to think that, my whole life is filled with these unusual things. It hasn't been. My life's been very normal, apart from just these events we're talking about, because probably this is what the viewers want to hear. So, yeah, when I was roughly 4 years old, we'd gone from New Zealand to America, and back from America back to New Zealand. And I was about 4, and I remember waking up on my parents' bed. I was at the foot of the bed, and I had 3 what appeared to be alien beings around me. One was directly in front, and one was over to the right on the right side of the bed, and the other was on the left side of the bed. The one on the left side of the bed seemed to be quite a bit taller than the other 2, but they were all very tall. And yeah, I was just like, what is this? Because you get quite a shock, I suppose, seeing things that aren't human.
And what sort of age are you at this point?
Roughly 4 years.
About 4.
Roughly 4 years old, and so these beings started. Well, the one that was standing in front of me started talking to me, and it was telepathically, and I was saying, "What are you? What are you doing? Who are you?" sort of thing, and they tried to reassure me that no, it's fine, everything's fine. We're your family. And I said, well, how can that be? I don't look like you. We're different. And they gave me some big long answer, which I can't recall. But they were determined to convince me that I was part of their family, and I was not sure about all this. And yeah, it was just a really bizarre experience, and couldn't work out why my mum and my dad were still asleep while this was all going on, and I was. Yeah, and I did think later. At the time, I felt like I was in my room with my mum and dad, but later it occurred to me that the room did seem a little bit bigger, and was it some sort of hologram?
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I would just be guessing. But did they want to put me in an environment where I felt safe with my parents on the first visitation, so that I didn't panic even worse than I did? I wouldn't say I panicked, but I was, I suppose it gave me some security to think that my parents were in the room at the time. Maybe that's why they did that. I mean, the one in front of me even started tickling me on the tummy and trying to, relax me and reassure me. And I was laughing and, giggling, and I'm thinking, come on, why is my parents not waking up? Not really knowing what was going on.
And so they did wake up, or after these guys had gone, did you speak to them? And
what happened was the 3 beings seemed to communicate with each other, and they spoke something about my stress levels, or perhaps being able to cope with me, or perhaps there was something along the lines of, I'm not sure if there was an agreement there or not, but there was something there that I can't quite recall, but it was something very important. But I think it's at that point it was determined that I wasn't going to be able to remember most of it.
Ah.
I think if I had been more open, probably, and less afraid, maybe there was a chance that I wasn't going to have so much wiped in the future. I was always going to be a bit of a rebel and going to be sort of fighting it, if you will. I'm not saying that their intentions were bad or anything like that. It's just that it was something new to me, and quite a bit of a shock at the time.
So after that event, then did that begin a series of encounters?
It did. It reoccurred. Like once every couple of months. I used to. Well, my mum used to refer to it as my reoccurring dream, because I would, tell her, Mum, this happened last night. Oh, can you believe what's going on? And she would just say, oh, well, that's a dream, Vernon. And I couldn't work out why I wasn't having other reoccurring dreams, or why this felt different, why it felt so real, just as real as you and I are talking now.
Yeah.
So it was a lot for a young child to take in, but because I was so young, I just kind of believed a lot what my mum said. She said it was a reoccurring dream, and I'm like, well, maybe she's right. I don't know what's going on here. Maybe So I just went along. I was just a young child.
Did your dad ever give any other comment about that, or
don't
have anything to say?
I don't even remember including my dad in the conversation. He just would have laughed. he still would today. He still would laugh. Yeah.
So after these kind of dreams, was that the only time that you had that you remember encounters with them?
Like, my mum called them the dreams. I don't call them dreams myself. What happened was these visitations occurring throughout my life up until the age of 16, where they appear to have stopped. I don't know that they have, but I think they did stop at that point because I kicked up such a fuss. But the next stage of my process of knowing that perhaps things were a little bit different was when I was about 5 or 6 years old, just very roughly speaking. I started seeing faces when I closed my eyes at night of people I had never seen before. So that was a bit unusual in itself, and that I could close my eyes and see extreme detail. The face would start off as a very small white dot in the distance, and it would zoom up closer and closer to here, and then the face would be right in front of me like this, and I could examine the face and everything on it.
And did you know those people?
Didn't know them. Mostly older people. They weren't children, and when I say older, I mean all adults. And I'm looking at these people, examining their faces, and I suppose that would last for roughly 45 seconds each face, and then they would zoom out and zoom out, and go back to nothing, a little white dot. And then there'd be a few seconds pause, and then another face would come in. And this coming in would roughly take about 10 seconds, and they would stay for about 45 seconds. And this, I thought, was a pretty neat trick, and and I kind of, at first it kind of startled me, but then I thought, well, this is pretty neat, let's just keep going with this. And, I'd see as many faces as I wanted to see, really, but it roughly was about 4 or 5 a night sort of thing, something like that, before I went off to sleep. Again, told my mum. She said it was a trick of light, but then I couldn't work out why I could have tricks of light when I closed my eyes, like you do like that. You close your eyes at night and you do see white, but you don't see faces. So I'm thinking, okay, that doesn't really explain it, but I'll just keep doing this. And I keep doing it for a number of years.
Oh, right, okay.
And the real shock for me came later in life when I was interacting with these people that I was seeing, I had seen when I was younger, in these faces.
Real time,
real life. I mean, obviously, when I was seeing these faces when I was younger, after several years, I felt like it was kind of not an intrusion, but I kind of got bored with it, and I just didn't understand it, and I gradually managed to block it out. So I stopped seeing the faces. I think it was a voluntary thing where I just didn't want to look for it anymore.
And what about the people that you met that you recognised as being some of the faces, at least, that you'd seen in your young years? Did they have a specific role in your life, or were they just Joe Public, or
just all people I've been interacting with?
I mean, were they specifically important, or
no? I mean, just just people that I was going to. It was unusual at first when I started seeing these faces on people, but I didn't jump to any conclusions. I just lived my life and kept seeing people that I had seen before.
And did you put the two and two together? Goes, oh, that's one of the faces from those moments.
Yeah,
as you reckon.
yeah, yeah. You do put it
I mean,
together.
it's curious, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is very very odd. But after a while, I just got used to it because I'd seen so many hundreds of faces. You do just get used to it after a while. And
do you think it was preparing you, sort of with a technique of helping you to just see, and these were just people picked at random from, who'd cross your path later in life, and just random folks, and it was like I'm not perhaps making myself clear, and it was just like a test, a technical facility, helping you to.
Maybe. I mean, maybe I that it was this year. I'm 51 now, so it was this year that I realised I was able to put those events and some more recent events about some more recent visions of that I'll get into in a little bit, and I was able to just put together in the last few months actually that they were actually visions, and I did some experiments in the last 11 years with visions, and so it all kind of panned out to look like I have this gift of vision, if you will, and I use it very conservatively and very carefully.
Yeah, so maybe that then, with the faces just coming in, just to finish off on that, maybe that was just, if you like, exercising the vision muscle. I don't know, but it's that you've seen as entities. That I'm talking about some of these beings that you've seen from the garden or in the garden with your friends when you were younger, because that's pretty extraordinary.
Yeah, the just going back to the faces, I would just say that it was extreme high definition is what I would put it, and I know we will have the ultra high definition on our TVs today, and it was so clear seeing these faces. I mean, incredible. I'll never forget it, and it's not something I probably want to do again, but it was really interesting. And moving on later in life, these visitations kept happening. My memory by and large seemed to be fairly well wiped, although I had some small recollections of what had gone on, and my mum would refer to it as my reoccurring dream.
Yeah.
And sorry, folks, I just keep looking at the cat. And
we're both looking at the cat, seeing if she's
up to mischief. So later on, now at this stage, I roughly would have been very roughly about 13 years old.
Yeah.
We had just moved house. My mum and dad had been separated not too long, and I had a friend over from school. His name was Stuart, and Stuart was in my bedroom looking out the window out into the back garden, and I still remember I was in the very next room, which was the toilet, and I was in the toilet, and he said, "Vern, you better come and have a look at this." And I said, "Oh, can't wait." I was in the bathroom, a little bit busy in there. "Can't wait, Stuart." He said, "No, you better come and have a look at this." So I said, okay, I'll get finished, come out and have a look. And he said, "Have a look at that in the garden." And we had a long garden, but roughly, I don't know, 25 meters at the end of the garden. And he said, "Look there, Vern, there's something moving." So I looked, and initially I couldn't see anything. And about 15-20 seconds, as my eyes started to focus, I could see what he was seeing, and it was what we would refer to as what looked like some sort of ghost figure, like a tall 6'8" figure, and it was going backwards and forwards, covering the distance of about four meters, very very slowly though, and it was like it had this typical white cloak, transparent but not completely see-through, but it was such a large figure. I couldn't see any arms or any legs.
How much of the body did you see?
It was like so you could see the head shape, the shoulder shape, and being such a large apparition, and we're both seeing the same thing, and we're looking at it and we just can't believe it. And this went on for, I think it was something like 30 minutes, very roughly speaking.
Apparition to be.
We were just we were just amazed, and as it disappeared, it didn't just go. It disappeared slowly back out into smaller
What
white
sort of
dot
in the distance?
in the into
Or just
occupying the same space,
oh, okay.
but just seemed to get
How
smaller and
intriguing.
smaller, and then it was golf ball size, and then it was pea size, and then it was nothing, and then a few days later, I'm looking out my window, it starts coming back, and it starts coming back the same way it disappeared. Like I first noticed that golf ball size, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger, and I suppose it would take roughly a minute, very roughly speaking, to become full size, and then it would just do the same thing, go backwards and forwards at the back of the garden. So I went back to school and told my friends and Stuart that this thing was. So he came. He would come after school, and he would come and we would watch this thing go backwards and forwards.
So it would come back when you were both there as well again.
Yeah, but not always. But over about a 3-month period, we were able to see it about 50%, possibly less, possibly 40 to 50% of the times that we were there looking. So you just had to chance it.
So you must have seen it more than 10 times, perhaps, or
we're talking 30 to 40 times over a 3-month period, easy. Yeah.
And was it always doing the same thing and for the same kind of period of time?
It wasn't. It wasn't. Yes, that we saw it going backwards and forwards, and in the end, my friend Stuart, he told me his mother didn't want him to come round anymore because he was having nightmares.
Oh no, really?
And his older brother Grant said he wanted to see it, so they came around, and Grant was up in my bedroom. It was a 2-story house, and we were looking out into the garden, and we must have waited for an hour, and there was nothing. When Stuart and I were quite disappointed because we wanted to show the older brother, who I suppose Grant would have been 16, 17 years old, and we wanted him to see what we had seen, and it didn't appear. So we thought, well, let's just. It was a nice sunny day. We'll go and sit up a bit closer to where it was appearing in the garden. So I guess we were sitting there in the sun for maybe, I don't know, it felt like an hour, and we were just talking in general, and nothing came out. And I was sitting on the right hand side, Stuart was sitting next to me, and Grant was sitting on the far left. I remember this very clearly, and Grant was just about in the process of saying that he didn't believe us. He got caught mid-sentence. He said something like, "Oh, I don't believe," and then we all saw something move in the bush in front of us, and because it was moving fast, and it didn't appear to be the white thing that Stuart and I had seen. I'm not saying it wasn't, but it was something different, and it shot up in the bushes in front of us, because we had quite a lot of bush there. And we just had this head staring back at us.
Only the head this time.
Head and a robe, and it's just the eyes that I will never forget, and the skin. The big, dark eyes, this green skin. It was because we were so close to it. It was literally 5 meters away, 4.5, 5 meters. So we were very close. We all saw its skin, and its skin looked like kind of a cucumber complexion, kind of like prickly, not prickly, but not smooth, and it had big black eyes. Yeah, we were scared, and this thing was very tall.
And was it just looking at you guys?
Straight at us, straight at us, and we reacted so fast. We were all quite athletic back then, and we got up and we got back to the house in no time at all. We covered that 30 meters, and
was there any kind of communication in any way, or was it just it was letting you see its full features?
Yeah, it never spoke, but it just showed itself to all three of us, and I would say that's one of the biggest frights of my life, and didn't expect it, and we all had goosebumps on our legs. It was summer, we had shorts on, our hairs were all sticking up on our legs. And we looked back to the bushes, and by that time we couldn't see it, but for the time that we were sort of saw it and then were running and looking back, I guess there was a 5-second period there where
it sort of disappeared again.
Yeah, and I don't know what that was all about, but
And again, can you just go back to the description? So it was hooded.
it appeared to be hooded. Now I don't remember the color of the robe. It was either black or purple, one of those two colors. But I it was the eyes and the color of the skin
and the complexion. If it was sort of that cucumber kind of complexion, then it's fairly mottled. Perhaps isn't the right word, but textured. And were there any other features of the texture of the cucumber skinlets, or was it pretty, pretty clear?
So I couldn't see him. I couldn't see a mouth. Right. It was just these overwhelmingly large eyes. I suppose I didn't feel it spoke to us. I didn't hear any words. But if eyes could ever talk, its eyes were talking. Its eyes were, I would say, a bit menacing.
Yeah, it was communicating.
We all got it. We all got a hell of a fright. It obviously wanted to frighten us because it moved up so fast.
Yeah,
it was intimidating. Yeah, at that point. So
the eyes, did you say, were black?
Black eyes. Yeah.
And was that the whole of the eyes, or was that the pupil?
It didn't appear to have a pupil. Just big black oval eyes, like this big. And its head would have been sort of that high.
Pretty
oval. Quite intimidating.
Yeah.
Quite intimidating thing to see.
Are there any legends or any stories of the region or location there?
Well,
relate possibly to anything like that?
The history of the house was that it was built for, I think his name was, the house that we lived in or were renting at the time was built by the neighbours who were Yugoslav people. I believe her name was Lucy. It was built for her father Jack. And Jack, I never knew Jack. He passed away before the house was built. But I understand he was a very tall man. So whether that was him as the apparition going backwards and forwards, perhaps it was. I really don't know. But it would kind of make sense if the house was built for him. But I'm just guessing.
You wouldn't have kind of expected him to have had that kind of complexion, though, would you?
Oh, not for the face. No, I don't know what that was about.
Yeah.
But for, just
maybe yes, for the other thing.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the two things there are connected, although it happened so close together.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just say the apparition was in this part of the garden, where this face appeared in the garden was just 6 or 7 meters to the right.
Oh, okay.
So whether the two are connected, I would just be guessing. But I did have one other experience in that house with the apparition. I'll say it's the apparition and not the one with the face, because I never saw the face. So this is what happened anyway. I was asleep in bed, and I got this overwhelming sense of someone watching me or something being near me. I needed to look, so I woke up and looked. This shape, if you will, very tall. Of course, when you were looking out from bed, things do look tall, but it was close to the ceiling, was standing over me. Instantly, the hair on the back of my neck stood up, just like you see in the movies, and that's the only time in my life I can actually remember the hair on my back of my neck actually standing up.
Yeah.
That's probably the most frightened I've been. So I thought, right, I've got to make sure I'm not dreaming here. This has to be a dream. It's not moving, because about 5 seconds went by and I felt frozen with fear, really, because you wake up and you see that sort of thing. So I pinched myself as hard as I could, as I'm sort of in this position in bed, lying down on my tummy at this point, and still looking up, looked away, pinched my arm, thinking, good, this is really hurting, I'm out of my dream, look back up, and it's still there.
Oh, and what did it actually look like? Can you give us a...
There was not very good lighting in my room because it was nighttime. I had my blinds open, so the light was coming in from outside. So I really didn't see a face. I really didn't see much at all, except the outline, and it was quite clearly there. There's no one in our house that fitted that description.
What was the outline like? What did it put your mind of?
Geez, the same thing that we saw in the garden with the apparition. It was the same, roughly the same height.
Oh, okay.
I got the same feeling, if you will, and it must have known that I was terrified, because it sort of stayed there for maybe another 15-20 seconds, and then it just seemed to hover out the room, not through the door, through a wall, but through the opening in the door.
And there was no other communication apart from the fact that you felt something was there, and so that kind of got your attention,
Yeah.
even through sleep, getting you to wake up and acknowledge it, and then the fact that you pinched yourself and gosh, it's still there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you clearly got this faculty of being aware of other, I don't know whether you'd call them other dimensional elements, beings, whatever strata.
It never came back into the house that I was aware of. I never woke and saw it again. Although, you know, the apparition in the garden did last for a whole 3 months,
Yeah.
roughly, before.
And how old would you have been around this event?
So it would have been, I would have been
Still
13, 12, 13.
Yes.
Yeah, 12, 13, around that age. Because I remember going, so I went from, you know, I had a primary intermediate school, then I went on to high school. So I can get those dates roughly with the friends that I had at that time and who I was closest with. So yeah, quite an experience for Stuart and I, and you know.
And Grant.
Yeah, and Grant, at the end. And funnily enough, I ran into Grant years later in a nightclub in New Zealand, and I guess we were in our mid-20s by then. And it's the first thing he brought up, apart from "Hello, Vern." He said, "You know, do you remember? You know, it happened in the garden."
So must have made an impression on him then.
Yes. I bet to this day we all remember it very clearly indeed. It's not something that you would forget.
Yeah. And what about further events that have coloured your life that have been clearly, you know, not the run of the mill?
So things sort of went on, and we moved house again. We moved actually just up into this on the same street, about 6 or 7 houses up. Another place became available, and we started. My mum started renting there, and we lived there. And I was at that stage. I was going to high school.
So we're just going to continue with Vernon telling us about another part of his experience, which has made an indelible impression, I think we could say.
Yes, so we had moved home just up the road, and the visitations were still continuing as normal. You know, once every several months something would happen, and I, you know, would recollect it as what my mother used to call as my reoccurring dream with these beings. You can call them mantids or whatever you will. This time round. And the experience that I'm able to actually remember, it's a bit shocking. What it is for me, I remember coming around. Now I think they used to keep me heavily sedated, and you know my memory wiped. But in this instance, I believe they didn't, they weren't able to use the same sort of sedation on me as they needed to perform and act. That's how, and I've since sort of thought how it was possible for me to remember this and come around during the deed. So I've come around. I've been supported on my right arm and my left arm by beings not of this world. You could call them greys. I don't know what they were. They weren't human. They were small in stature, but they were kind of stronger than they looked. And I've come around, and I'm having sex with this woman with black short hair, kind of reptilian features, and that she had very slanted eyes. She was very pale, and she had like what appeared to be some sort of reptilian tail going on, keeping in mind that I was under some sort of sedation at the time. But what I do remember most was coming around and seeing the shock on her face and the surprise that I was seeing her. And she obviously, took her off guard. She kind of went, you know, like this. And at that point, I started fighting and you know, punching these beings holding me each side. And then they telepathically seemed to tell me, you know, please don't blame us. We're working under orders. You know, we don't want to do this. We don't want to do this. Please don't hurt us. So I stopped punching them. Everything seemed to kind of end at that point. Now, what that means, I don't know. I assume some other form of sedation was given, but you know, the last thing I remember was that them telling me they didn't want to to do this. They were working under orders. But I'll never forget her face and the fact that I felt like I had been used to inseminate her, perhaps. That was the impression that I got. I only ever have a recollection of that happening the once, and that'll be enough for a lifetime, more than enough for a lifetime. Quite a shock indeed, and just a really unusual experience that I wouldn't want to happen to anyone.
Can you give us a little bit more detail of her face, Vernon? I know you said it was sort of reptilian, but sort of the colour of the skin. I mean, we assume it might be green, but I don't know. We don't want to assume anything. And any eye contact and any perhaps even transient communication, if there was any.
I remember her complexion being pale and white and human-like, not green, but definitely the eyes. The eyes were very reptilian. You know, I suppose if some might consider her to be beautiful, you know, she certainly wasn't hard on the eye. I suppose that's the best way of putting it. If you could mix in a supermodel perhaps with someone with reptilian features, that's what kind of this being looked like. But it was the shock on her face that I'll always remember, the fact that I had seen her. You know, I had come around and seen her. I don't really know. She had quite sharp features, and that, you know, like, when I say sharp features, I just mean as we would see as on other people. Quite sharp nose, quite thin, chiseled cheeks, short hair. She seemed to be up on some sort of a throne or something. She's obviously, I don't know, I'm just going to guess that she's some type of breeding machine. I don't know. I got a feeling that she was playing a very important role, and perhaps I was playing a small part in that.
Yes, and the mechanism of the act, and when I say that, what I mean is, was she standing up, or were you lying down with her, or how did that play out?
They had me standing up, and they had her sitting in some sort of chair or throne, or, you know, so it was all very quick, but it was one of those things that happen in your life that when something shocking happens, everything goes into slow motion, and, you know, it's like a car crash. If you've ever been in a car crash, and it happens in a couple of seconds, but if you replay it in your mind, it felt like it took 30 seconds to a minute for that car crash to happen. It's that type of shock.
Yes. So when you sort of came to, obviously you'd been stimulated, so you could do this sexual act, and these two other beings were just holding you in position, I guess. And was there anything externally, anything you know, in the environment that played into this at all in any way that you might have been aware of?
I was so, for the lack of a better word, mind controlled, or you know, they had me drugged up, and I can't describe things very well. There were other things going on in the room, but I don't know what they were, because my obvious focus was, the first thing I did was I looked down and I saw, you know, what was going on, and then I looked up and saw her face, and then I'm trying to move away, and you know, they're holding me, and then I'm fighting with them, and then there's the communication between me and them. And then,
was there any sensation and or communication from her, or smell, or, you know, anything of those sensory faculties going on?
I think, you know, I could probably try and put it into words by saying that, it's kind of, it is difficult to put into words, but if, you know, I think there must be some sort of sexual stimulant on me, because I was aroused. I had heightened arousal, very heightened. So yeah, I felt that, and
were you quite fearful when you came to and saw, you know, what was going on?
The funny thing was, I was so, I guess they had me so drugged up. I was more taken back by her. I was shocked, but I was more shocked to see her shocked. You know, so if I wasn't under any mind influence, controlled drug by them, you know, I would have just thought about myself. But, you know, the first thing I noticed was not just me, but her expression, and then these things holding me, and then them talking.
So as you began hitting out, which was probably a reflex response, I can imagine, because I'm sure that many people would feel that, go into that mode. And did you make contact in your lashing out?
Yeah, I
Or
mean,
hitting out?
I was, 16, but I was quite strong 16-year-old. I used to, was quite athletic. I used to go to the gym, and I was quite capable. But because I was also drugged up, I don't know how much impact I was having.
Yeah.
They were still able to hold me. I think I was obviously causing them some pain, and that's why they communicated back to me. They kind of were flinching around, and I was, breaking free. But at that point, they told me, look, we don't want to do this. We're under, all, you'll be okay, sort of thing. It's a reassurance, really.
Interesting. They said, please don't hurt us, or
they didn't. Yeah, they didn't want to be there. That was the impression I got. They weren't. I didn't notice any clothing on them as well. No clothing on the people holding me at all that I can recall. When I say people, entities. But yeah, really odd. Very, very strange.
And did you have that memory immediately available, or was it, that event happened 16 years, came and went, and then you forgot all about it? Or did you have immediate recall, say, the next day or that evening?
Yeah, straight away. Yeah, the thing with these situations is, I think they get you while you're asleep, and then you wake up. You wake up in bed. To my knowledge, I haven't had any daytime abductions, if you will, or visitations. If I have, then I have no memory of it.
It's interesting too, because you said that those beings that were holding you, did you say, am I right in thinking you said that they were greys of a type, or?
They had a pale to grey complexion, and there wasn't much of them, and by meaning that they were quite thin.
Sort of the archetypal representation is I guess what I'm asking, is that sort of on the money, or are they a bit different from that?
I think they were probably greys, but I would be guessing, because I'm not familiar with all the different races and things like that. This is not really a subject of interest of mine. A lot of people say, oh, these people that have these experiences, how come they're always interested in these subjects? Well, I'm not, and I never was. But I've become more interested because I wanted to learn more about what happened to me, and I've seen some other people recount similar experiences, and it gives me something to relate to.
Yeah. So that's a major experience and quite shocking, but the only one that you remember of that type, in conscious.
It was very, very, very vivid. Yeah. It's just like you can recall it as much as anything that really traumatic that happens to you in your life.
And did it? You used that word traumatic. Did it traumatize you, or did you just think, oh well, what the heck? That's just something that's come and gone? And
yeah, I think these things, they do traumatize you. I just think I had a good coping mechanism. I had a very happy childhood, lots of friends, good family. So I had a lot of support and get on with it. I just would get on with the next day I would have just gone to school. I think I was still at school at 16. Would have gone to school. Nothing's different, nothing's changed, except that that experience, and it's off-putting, but the world doesn't stop. You just move on.
And were you able to tell anybody else, or did you want to tell anybody else about that? Because that's quite a deeply personal, and I think it's amazing that you're sharing it, but incredible event.
Yeah, I haven't really shared this with anyone other than my wife before. This is the first time, and obviously yourself when we spoke previously. So yeah, it's not something that you want to hold up a banner and say this happened to me, because no one would be able to get their head around it, because they would need to have this happen to themselves to believe it. And I understand that it's not very nice, but you just got to get on with it.
Yeah. Well, I think you've done a great job of getting on with things. So moving on in your life then, Vernon, I mean, you seem to have had, as you said, a happy time and very functional, really enjoying your life, and you've got your family and all the rest of that. But have there been any, since you were sort of 16, any other major events or attributes which have really shown up in your life, which have impacted you and are becoming part of you? If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. went from my schooling into work. I wanted to work quite early, and I went through a number of different jobs doing different things. I didn't have any recollection of visitations after that experience we just talked about. However, later in life, in 2011 approximately, so this is many years later, one of my interests was following the gold price. And one night while I was sitting in the bath, I was just thinking about the price of gold, and I started seeing numbers. And I thought, that's a bit weird. I was wide awake in the bath seeing numbers. And I thought, well, I'm thinking about the gold price. These numbers could be the gold price. But, I didn't immediately make the connection. All I thought was, okay, let's write the numbers down. So I wrote the numbers down. In the following days, these numbers were hit with the gold price. And they turned out to be quite significant numbers, not just numbers. Because when the price goes up and the price goes down, all numbers will get hit. But to be a significant number, they usually get hit at a point where they change direction, or they stay and they go sideways for a while. Anyway, I just thought maybe, that was luck, and I tried it again, relaxing in the bath, thinking about the gold price, more numbers. This went on for a few months, and it kept being very accurate, and I thought I'd take it to the next level and try and be brave. And I took it to a financial forum where they specifically talk about gold and silver, and they also talk about other investments and things like that. And I thought, well, they're going to think I'm a complete nut, but I'm going to go in and I'm going to give my predictions, and we're going to see what's going to happen. So I wanted there to be a record of this, and I thought, perhaps I'd fall flat on my face with this, but I wanted to try, and it was really an experiment for me, to see that I wasn't going mad. And so I started making my predictions, and I was able to call the gold crash. I don't think there was too many people, if any at all, other people that was able to call the crash like I did. I called it within a 5-day period, so I was able to tell the forum when it was going to happen. I think that was through intuition. I felt as though it was going to happen very soon. And I was able to give them the prices as the price went down. Yeah, so I've gone through all these numbers, and everything's working really well. I was getting some skepticism on the site, people thinking I had inside information, and all sorts of things would have been running through their head, I suppose, understandably. And I started making more predictions, and then they started hitting and coming true. To the dollar. I told them that 1,251 US dollars was going to be a false bottom, and then it was going to crash to 1,111 US dollars and possibly go lower. And that's exactly what happened. $1,251 was called at the bottom, I believe, by the investment firm Barron's, I think it is. Anyway, there's an article about it somewhere online, that them calling the bottom at 12.51. And it turned out to be a false bottom, exactly as I had predicted. And it went down to my number, 1,111, had a massive buyback at that price. We're talking billions of dollars. And then it sold off a little bit more, like $60 or $70 worth more. But then it quickly bounced back up to my number, and it stayed there for a little while and bounced higher. So that was pretty amazing to be a big part of that first experiment with gold price. And at that point, I was copping a little bit of flack on the forum. So I decided it was maybe time to leave, because I don't know if I was frightening these people or if it was interfering with their.
Was it flack in regard to you being some kind of insider again, or?
I don't know. I just think people couldn't really understand what was going on, and I'm
a bit unnerved by your predictions.
Yeah, and I'm not to say it was interfering with their investments, but it could have been. But I got the feeling I wasn't wanted. They gave me the impression I wasn't wanted on the site. I got more negative feedback from them and no positive feedback from them, which I was kind of amazed, because I thought they would want someone there to kind of tell them, help them with where the price was going. So I thought I was.
And was it a special financial forum? I mean, a dedicated one for gold prices.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. An Australian forum.
Okay.
Yeah, it was called Silver Stackers. They're still operating, I believe. So I went and I decided, I made an announcement on the forum that I was going to open my own Twitter account and continue doing it there. If they wish to follow me, then come and follow me on Twitter. And I did that for many, many years, calling many more gold prices, some on the day and some, hours before, which is not that amazing really, because anybody can really do that looking at a chart, I suppose. But I would also call predictions well in advance. So yeah, this went on for a long time, and I started to get some really knowledgeable business people in the gold industry take notice, and they would follow me and I followed them back, and I've been able to learn a lot from them because I'm not a financial person. So it's worked both ways, I suppose.
And have you been able to benefit yourself, or have you been brave enough to dip your own toe in your own predictive waters?
Let's keep that a secret.
Okay.
Let's keep that
All
a
right.
secret. Let's keep that a secret. I have to keep some things back to myself. But anyway, it was great to have these followers on Twitter. So I, continued with my predictions. And then I felt gold was, falling a bit flat and in price, and things were going a bit sideways. And, I just got back to ordinary life, I suppose, ordinary news, the election with Donald Trump was coming up. I had some strong intuition that he would win by a landslide. So I made that very public, put it all over Twitter. I think I was one of the very few that was able to predict his win. That was not a vision. I believe it was just intuition. A lot of research, in fact, a lot of work went into me. I actually put a small bet on that. I won some money on that because he was a rank outsider to win. And then a couple of years later, I started getting sort of interested in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies because the market was going haywire and shooting up and getting my attention. And I thought, wouldn't it be neat to be able to not only have predicted the most accurate gold predictions in the world, but do the same thing for Bitcoin, and that would be really incredible. So initially, I tried to get into Bitcoin at the start, and I tried to pick a Bitcoin high, and I could see it going to 6,000, 7,000, but it actually went much higher than my predicted numbers. Can't say that I saw that coming, but I thought, well, maybe I don't own any Bitcoin, so I need to own it. I need to own it to really, get into the subject. I need to really get into the subject, right? So I stopped thinking about gold price and just got solely thinking about Bitcoin price.
Did you have any of the other experiences, Vernon, regarding, say, Bitcoin, like you did say initially with the gold, where you'd be, say, in a relaxing situation, like in your bath, and have numbers coming that way, or was that just at that moment?
Yeah,
I mean, for the gold.
I kind of made, I wanted to see if these numbers were being given to me or I was manifesting them.
Right.
So I purposely tried to manifest my Bitcoin numbers. Now, this would make me realize if they were being gifted to me, out there for me to grab, or could I manifest it myself? So the Bitcoin was intentional for me to see if I could do it myself. And yeah, I was able to intuitively call the top price of around 19,500 and call the market crash down to 6,000, where it sat for nearly a year. I think a very stable market for Bitcoin around it's between 1,000 and 6,600 and something or other. So anyway, I was able to call that move, and then I thought I'd really need to take it a step further if I really want to make this experiment work of mine, and prove that I can do this. So I was upstairs, I knelt down beside the bed, and I just thought, get the numbers, Vern, get the numbers. And I had a bit of paper, I had a pen out, and I wrote down the numbers 6665. I could see it, I could visualize, I could see it, straight down, price literally fall straight down, 5665. The arrow straight down, 3,200, which to me signifies a market crash. So the prices.
When was this, Vernon? Was this
Okay.
recently?
No. I made these Bitcoin predictions quite close together. I called the top from Bitcoin. Let's see, the top of the market was the end of 2017, and I called the top literally a week or so before it started to drop off. And then it was around the beginning of 2018. So the market was still up near its peak, or by then it had maybe dropped down to 17,000, and then I had called it down to 6,000 at that point. So that became true, and then.
And was that over a long period of time, or say over a day or two, or a week or so?
It took many months to get down to 6,000. We had an up, we had a down, we had a down, we had an up, we had a down, we had an up, we had a down. But none of those numbers seemed significant to me until it hit 6,000, where it plateaued around the 6,000 mark, between 6,000 and 7,000. So the main prediction I made for Bitcoin, I made early 2018, which is still up close to the high point of, it peaked at 19.5 US dollars, 19,500, and I made that prediction when the price was roughly about 17,500 US dollars. And then my prediction was for the crash to go from 6,665, which I saw as a significant number, running along the medium, if you will, of the plateau. And then it was going to drop down to 5,665 and then 3,200. But when I say 3,200, it was really hard because I tried really hard. I got the first two numbers really easy. And then when I had to visualize the bottom, it was very, very difficult to do. I just tried my best, and all the only numbers I could get was 3 and 2, and I could not get the other numbers. All I could see was numbers flicking, and it doesn't matter how hard I tried to look, I just saw the numbers flicking. So I put my prediction. It's out there on Twitter, and it says 3, 2, question mark, because I didn't know the last two numbers. As it turns out, the price went to 3,200. We had a massive fight then between the bulls and the bears, which is the buyers and the sellers.
Yeah. And when would that have been? Late 2018, or because we're only still quite early 2019 at the moment.
So I haven't got the. It was quite recent. We had that.
Okay.
It was just a few months ago now. We had that all happen.
Just the other side of sort of Christmas.
Yeah, I think it was it January?
All right, okay.
January, I think it was. Yeah.
It's really a general sense rather than a sort of.
Yeah, so basically a year after my predictions, almost, they came true, down to 3,200. Now at that point, everyone was calling 1,000. It's going 1,000, it's got to go further, got to drop further. And there was this massive fight at 3,200. I did buy a little Bitcoin there. I backed myself then because I had seen what I've done, with the gold price and with Bitcoin, and I thought, well, I'm going to buy a bit here, So I did, and I at one night when I was sleeping, the price dipped down to its very lowest. It just peaked down and went straight back up, and I believe it was like 70 US dollars below 3,200. On the market that I watch. Now, if you look at the general market, it'll tell you the low was 3,200. The market that I generally watch, they're all a bit different, aren't they? But it said like 3,123 or whatever it was. So,
but not very far different.
Not very far different, and I did do my best at trying to call the bottom. The thing I'll say is that the main battle at 3,200, it was huge. I mean, billions of dollars were changing hands, and it was really exciting to watch. I couldn't keep my eyes off the screen because I personally believe, I don't know if it's true or not, I personally believe that my visions come true because it's something that I will see. That's how I feel. I think if I'm not watching it, it won't come true, right? I don't know, but I've never tried not looking. I'm too curious to see if it works or not. So I'm watching. I had a lot of sleepless night watching the price, not because I was worried about losing money necessarily. I was worried about my predictions being wrong because it means a lot to me. It's sort of my next big experiment. Yeah, and that went really well. And then eventually the price just bounced. Up, boom, 4,000, and then we had a correction back down. 3,300. It didn't go anywhere near 3,200 again. and at the moment I think it's heading back up to 4,000 again on another bullish move. So yeah, I would call that another very very positive experiment on those predictions. Quite breathtaking, really. I guess I got less surprised though than the gold predictions, because sometimes when I used to get my gold predictions, I would literally be shaking afterwards.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'd literally be shaking because I guess it was the shock of being right. What did it mean? What did it mean? What did it mean? And then coming along a little bit further, just like I said recently, a few months ago, the connection for me seemed to make sense of me pre-birth, seeing some of the people that are going to be, with me in my life, seeing the faces, interacting with those people, then doing the gold market, then doing the Bitcoin market.
Did you see the markets in your pre-birth? Did you see anything of that?
No.
Okay.
No, nothing. It was mostly emotional.
Oh yeah,
attachment.
yeah. No, I just wondered as you were, bring it all together.
Yeah. So no, it was just all the pre-birth thing was all emotional and all to do with people that I would love and stuff like that. But, and then the big thing for me, and what really gave me a sense of understanding of myself, was putting it all together. That hey, this all fits. This all fits. So is whether this gift was given to me by my visitors or whether this gift was given to me by our Creator, who can say?
I've got a pussycat at the window as well.
Yeah. You come under cat flap, silly. Yeah, come under cat flap.
But isn't that interesting? Because I mean, this is still going on for you then, the experiment.
Well, yeah, I've kind of decided to complete it now, simply because I want to do something a bit more useful. Perhaps I can use my visions to help people in need, rather than help billionaires become multi-billionaires or millionaires become billionaires. It just makes more sense to use it for a better purpose.
And have you thought what you might be using it for?
I'm open to suggestions. Yeah, I'm sure there's got to be a use for it. I mean, I really would like to just help people who need help, and I'm not guaranteeing that I can help them, but say they have a missing child or something like that, or their teenager's been abducted. I would use everything in my power to try and find them for them. So that's sort of the work that I would like to get into, being able to really make a difference, not in the financial side. Not saying that I would be successful in that field, but that's my next experiment. That's something like that. Somewhere where I could help people really make life-changing changes with these people. I know the financial side would help them, but there's always the concern that one day, I might get it wrong. They could lose all their money, and I would feel responsible. And I think that's another reason I sort of want to leave the Bitcoin and gold markets behind, because it has been successful. Hundreds and hundreds of predictions if you count the gold ones and my brief Bitcoin. And it's just something that I would like to leave there. And I guess from a human point of view as well, I want to keep a perfect record, or very very near perfect record. I suppose we all have a bit of an ego. I'd like to keep it there. And more importantly, I would like to move ahead with in a different direction now, just with people that need my help more, and I've just got to find out what it is.
And what about any continuing, I don't know, let's call them encounters? Because a lot of times these things are generational, just going back to that. And I'm just wondering if your mum or your grandparents or your family, your children have had anything.
Yep. Yes. Yeah. I'm pleased you brought that up, because it reminded me that when our younger son, we have 2 children, and my wife and I, and when my youngest son was roughly about 4, he started saying he was seeing monsters, and we just thought they would, dreams, and we would talk about him with that, and then they seemed to be reoccurring often, and he wasn't watching any late night television, nothing scary, so we couldn't really understand. So we got him I started to make was there a possible connection to what happened to me to happen to him? I didn't jump to a conclusion, but I gave him a pen and I gave him a paper, and I got him to draw what was happening. And what he drew just made my jaw drop with fright, because he drew what happened to me. Three alien beings in a room with him, alien shaped head, and that's what he had been telling us had been happening. But he didn't necessarily first just come out and tell us this. He would be very reluctant to speak about it with us, and we couldn't figure out why. And that's one of the main reasons I gave him the paper and the pen to draw the pictures. And he whispered to his mum. He said, "They told me if I tell anyone, they will hurt people in the family." So some sort of he felt under threat not to discuss this with us, and quite terrified. I got pretty angry about the whole thing, as you are,
Yeah, absolutely.
any protective parent would be, and I immediately installed CCTV in the house. I've got them in the bedrooms. I've got them all around the property. I was just thinking of practical things that I could do. I don't assume to be able to stop things that can just come into the house willy-nilly with any fancy alarms. I mean, they seem to have a lot more technology and advancement than we have, but I thought there's no harm in trying, right?
No, absolutely.
And so, I would put motion sensors around the back of his bed and all sorts of things that, try and keep these things away from, just checking on him all the time. I mean, he slept with his mum for, most of his life, and he's sleeping in his own bed now, but his mum still sleeps in the room. So they've got the boys in a single bed. Mum sleeps on a mattress on the floor between them. She has done ever since. He's that scared. He's 8 years old now. So yeah, well, he doesn't talk about it like I say, and maybe one day he'll feel more comfortable.
And what about the technology that you've put up around? Was there anything, that you saw from that, the CCTV and the motion sensors?
I haven't. We've had a couple of alarms go off, but nothing that I could say was a definite hit. But my wife saw something, and that was with Donnie. She was with him in the main bedroom, in our bedroom, in the big bed, and she woke up and she saw what she described as a large being. I think she said a large man, but obviously it wasn't a man. A large being, and it was, the reason I say it wasn't a man was because no human being could get past our security. I've got so many alarms in this house, and it was doing this colourful thing with its hands, and she described it as like the colour of water and petrol mixed together, that purpley swirly colours, and she said she was just mesmerised for quite a few minutes by these colours and swirling patterns that this being was doing with its hands. I personally don't recall colours in my experiences or swirling hands or anything like that, but then I don't have much of a recollection at all because a lot of my experiences were wiped. But she saw, that's what she told me she saw, and it was at that time after, she told me she saw that, and my son had reported everything. And then I think shortly after we got him to draw the picture, it was like in that order. And then I got the CCTV cameras like the next day, and I put them up. So, but I've not been able to capture anything unusual.
Is he still drawing things? Is he still having?
Well,
you don't know.
I only recently discussed with my two children what happened to me. I just discussed the basics with them. I just discussed the visitations, not the gory details. I don't want to frighten them, but I just discussed it with them because I knew we'd be discussing this, and I didn't want them to be shocked and frightened. And I don't want.
I think it's really healthy, actually, because I think that's one of the issues that grown-ups have about their children is the fear of what may, if they know about, like you do, your son's events. But, most experiencers had experiences as children also. Not everyone, but many. And many didn't have anyone to speak to about that. And I think That culture has got to stop. I think it's healthy to open the doors. I mean, you have to do it carefully, have to be very circumspect how you do it and not cavalier at all, but to give those children, through your voice, a safe space to be heard and to, because if it's happening to others, and it clearly is, children, parts of the world, whatever, as you were, then how awful for them not to be able to speak about it.
Sure, yeah.
And also the threat issue, I think we have to flag that up personally, big style, because the more we know, the more people know about this, they're not going to be able to intimidate everybody. They can't.
That's right.
And I think it's outrageous.
Yeah, yeah,
Frankly, I mean, and I've heard this threat thing before many times.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I don't mean just with children, but with people as well.
Wow.
Yeah, don't tell anybody or you're going to get hurt. And not always ET stuff, but sometimes, and it's not that it's all bad. I don't mean that either.
Yeah.
But there have been those occasions, as I just mentioned. But I think this is fantastically wonderful and open of you to put this on the table and to say, hey.
Well, it's been good to get it all out, and I think after
I have to thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. After everything coming together, and obviously now with it, affecting my son, I think people have a right to know.
I think that's it, a right.
I want people to, come up, draw their own conclusions. I believe, this needs to be disclosed. And whatever it is, I'm, I still keep an open mind about these things. Whatever it is, that was my experience, and I can just tell it the way it was. And take it
did your children have? What was their response? I guess I'm asking you when you shared your experiences in a light way with them.
They think it's pretty neat that Daddy has supernatural powers and can guess the future to a certain extent. And I said it's not exactly how it works. I said, I just.
Did you tell them about the beings? Did you mention that bit?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that was the most important bit. That I mentioned that I had visitors from a very early age.
Was Donnie surprised?
They weren't human. He stayed very quiet in the back and just listened. And it was my elder son that sort of asked me more questions about it. So yeah. Actually, it's funny. Donnie's a lot like me. Actually, as a child, we could have put him against each other. We looked the same. Whereas my elder son looks probably a cross between my wife and I. Donnie's sensitive like me. My other son not so much. So yeah. There's differences there between the two children. I don't know how they pick who they visit. It could be pure chance. Or they could have specific criteria. I certainly hope he doesn't have to go through and continue going through what I had to go through. But if he does, I'll be there, there for him to support him, and just try and be a good dad. I mean, obviously, I try and focus on everyday normal stuff.
Yeah,
and
sure.
These odd things that come up, that are very infrequently, really, then we just approach it.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. And what did your other son think about what you had to say, and knowing that his brother had something happen? Was he okay?
We haven't actually discussed.
Oh, okay.
The youngest. We haven't discussed the eldest and the youngest as being anything other than dreams yet.
Okay.
Because we didn't. We thought they would. We're frightened, Donnie. Yeah?
Okay.
We're quite happy for him to think they're dreamers at the moment until he's a bit older.
Yeah.
I just shared my experience with him. I didn't want him to tell him he has visitors because that would be too much for any 8-year-old. So we're happy for him just to think they're dreams for now. When he gets older and stronger, more emotionally able to sort of cope with that information, we'll certainly give it to him.
And it sounds like as a family unit with your wife as well, that you're just all together as a solid piece, and supporting each other with that, which is fantastic because that's not always the case.
Yeah, we've got a very supportive family, loving family, and the only other thing I would mention is that another thing, which is why I called you, this is not something that I saw, but something that my wife saw, and it was just very recently, and I don't know, they call him a shadow hat man, and he appeared just inside the door behind you in the kitchen to my wife in broad daylight, and she said he was a solid feature. Had solid features, and he stayed and observed her for about 30 seconds. And I said, why didn't you yell? She said, didn't feel threatened. I felt frozen. And I was sitting right there. The door was open. I was on the laptop looking at the Bitcoin price. And I said, if you had a call, I could have looked up and seen, I could have seen where it was standing, whatever it was. I didn't even know what a shadow person was up until that point, and I started looking online. And then because my wife was making such a big deal about it, as you would, she was quite shocked. The children who were upstairs, they overheard our conversation, because our voices were sort of raised with fright, I suppose, and like bewilderment, and they heard. And so the youngest, so Donnie, slept with his mum in the big bed that night, and he woke up in the morning. They had the blinds open and there was some light coming through, and he said the shadow man was in the wardrobe. The wardrobe door was open, and my wife turned the light on and he wasn't there. And I sort of think to myself, well, he saw what he saw, but if you do look into a wardrobe, there's clothes there. They can look like something, right? And he was frightened when he went to bed. So there's that possibility but that's a possible explanation. But with my wife's experience, broad daylight, she's never hallucinated before. I can't explain what my wife saw. And I've been sleeping with a torch under my pillow ever since, because I thought if he appears in my room, I would like to see him. Yeah. For myself, Yeah. Tell him to get out.
And why aren't you tripping the sensors?
I don't. A lot of people have different explanations online for what these things are. I really don't know. I'm just sort of keeping an open mind. Are they a spiritual entity? Are they a holographic projection? Is it someone being able to teleport and just observing, or someone darting in between the dimensions? I don't know. I'd just be guessing.
Yeah. So while she didn't feel threatened, was there any kind of communication or anything other than just the visual?
Just the visual. He didn't seem to move. She said,
but with a hat. What kind of a hat?
She said he was tall and fedora. She said fedora type hat. Yeah, and so I was quite gutted really, because I was sitting right there and I literally could have been there, and I would have gone for him if he had obviously something in the house. And after all the experiences I've gone through, I'm really not frightened of a lot of things anymore. Really not scared, especially with children in the house. So I would have found out if he had a physical being or not. If he had, I would have been able to throw him out. But I'm sure that wouldn't be the case. He would have just disappeared or whatever. Okay, so he was standing here apparently in this position right inside the door, right here where my glass is. Yeah. And facing my wife in the kitchen there. And I was seated right here. So I was seated right there where the book is. So I would have had direct vision to where he was, but I had my head buried in the
and you didn't pick up anything, sensorily either?
No, not at all. Yeah. Not at all. Not until she came in and told me. Yeah. And I was just gobsmacked because it's a new one on me. And me.
Hiya, Puddly Cat.
Hello, Alf. Hello.
And usually he says, okay, enough now, it must be tea time.
Yeah, he's telling me it must be approaching 5 o'clock. We've got half an hour to wait, young man.
Okay. All right, so that's over and out from Canterbury. And thanks again, Vernon.
Take care, everyone. Thanks for listening.